Hey, my name is Joonas Laakso. I'm an executive producer working with Next Games in Finland, and I am personally working on The Walking Dead No Man's Land, which you may be familiar with. I'm not going to be talking about the game or Next Games per se today, but rather something near and dear to my heart. The header for this talk was making decisions, but what it started out as, the working title was "The Producer Must Die," which were the first words to come to my mind when I was asked for a title to talk about at this event. And at first I didn't quite understand what it was about, but it turns out that this year I have a bit of a soul-searching problem. And when I was asked to fill a younger producer working in my team, on his duties and how to advance in his career, I kind of felt like I don't want you to go down the same route that I've gone through, even though it's made me an executive producer on this amazing brand, because I really feel like these days that what we are used to doing as producers is actively and actually and in the very real sense hurting the teams that we are supposed to be working. I just do not believe in the stuff that I've been taught and that I've been teaching anymore. I think it's wrong. We are looking at it from the wrong direction. And when we're teaching producers, we're talking about processes, we're talking about budgeting, scheduling, prioritizing, and all of that is beside the point. It's not helping the teams at all. So from that title, I produced to, can we move, let's skip all the bad stuff because I don't want to be bringing everybody down here, but rather talk about the good stuff. So what should we be doing instead of the duties that you're expecting from producers, if I feel that they're wrong? So let's get to the good stuff, and the good stuff is making decisions. And it's all about the producer as the person who is building a culture, building a team, nurturing a team, instead of laying down rules that somehow make things happen. Yes, rules are important, but only once things work, and we know what kinds of processes come naturally to the specific team that you're working with. So the topic is actually establishing culture and making that happen. And the objective of culture is not like something like mushy and soft. The objective is actually making good decisions. And I'm sure that any management type can get behind good decisions. Because regardless of your role in a game studio or in publishing or in marketing or UA or whatever, you're still paid to make good decisions. That's actually the job. That's why you've been hired. And that is something that we're all sharing. And I was asking myself, why do I feel the need to establish rules and processes? And I came to the conclusion that the reason is that I don't trust that the people that are working in my teams would make the right decisions unless they had these rules in place. And that seems like a really ass-backward way of doing it, so I'm trying to get rid of that. And instead, trying to create a culture where we share certain things, and that gets us to making good decisions. And what's helping you there is company values. How many of you have defined company values? About half, let's say. How many of you feel like you're using them on a daily basis? I'm seeing 2, 3 hands, 4. What I realized this year is that if you're really banking on the company values, that's going to get you to a unified culture, and that's going to, in turn, get you to actually making good decisions. And I'm going to be obviously using our values at Next Games, courage, caring, and curiosity. As an example here, they were not created for this specific application, but they work here really well. And I find that I'm now valuing our values quite a bit because they're helping me actually create value with the team. It's something very concrete. And the reason why we need to be discussing how to make decisions is that making decisions is really hard. And you shouldn't imply that it comes easy to you. If it does, you're probably not taking it very seriously. I don't like making big decisions. I don't think I know anybody who, like in a position of responsibility, who likes making big decisions. It's hard. It's very hard to be certain. Everybody hates taking responsibility. This is why things never get decided, because nobody wants to take the responsibility. You're afraid, what if you're wrong? You're afraid maybe they laugh at me when I'm wrong or whatever. And a very big secret here to understand is that everybody feels the same way. Like if you're the big CEO making the big shots, you're most likely afraid of the very same things as the guy on the line, like changing the color of the icon or whatever. It's all the same, really. And it just comes down to insecurity. And obviously, thinking back to our values, you understand that courage is something that is very, very useful here. It's okay to be afraid. Like I can say that I don't like making big decisions, I don't like taking responsibility, but I'm willing to confront it in order to get results and get things done. I have that courage, and I want to nurture it. So with all that behind, let's get to the actual topic. So how to make good decisions. I figured that we can have some tools here. And the way that I put this to my team just the other week is that when I decide to join you in a meeting room, like when you're discussing something within the team, the reason is that I don't trust you guys to make the right decisions. I feel like you don't have all the information, or for some other reason, I don't feel like you're going to end with the same or like an acceptable decision for me. And that is why I feel the need to come in and give my input and make sure that you're making the right calls. But I figured that actually the checkpoint that I'm using to get to the I feel good decisions is actually very simple. And then I shared the checklist, and what do you know? The team indeed does seem more self-assured and more willing to make decisions when they understand how I'm thinking and how I'm expecting them to think. And that's culture. It's doing together. It's understanding how your teammates are thinking. So these are the tools that I use. So first of all, there's this thing that people tend to ask is, what would my boss do? What would my boss think? It's fine to think that and then act on that, but if you actually come out and step up to me and ask me what should I do in some situation, that's telling me that you don't know what to do, you don't know how to do your job. That's probably not true. And probably I don't want to hear that you're insecure. I will help you, like when you ask for the help, but I hate that you would, because you're supposed to know what to do. So don't come out and ask that what would my boss do, rather have courage and make the call yourself. Somebody has made the estimation that you are qualified to do so. The second question that you could be asking is, and I should be asking, is what do the numbers say? So working in mobile games, we are very big on analytics, and the way we want to use them is basically when you have a hunch that something is working or not working in some way, then you go to the numbers and verify. Far too often, you're going to realize that actually what you assumed is just plain not right. It's not the case. Like even though it seems to make sense, it just doesn't pan out in light of what people are actually saying and how they're behaving. And again, the secret is that most likely, if you're thinking about a new or a hard problem, nobody knows the numbers. It's okay. Just feel confident to ask, have the curiosity to go find out. Certainly, if you're working in a mobile game studio, you will have staff that can help you figure out the numbers. We are doing this discussion every single day. It's always okay to say, I don't know, if you follow it up with, but I will find out. The third very big question before we get to the actual checklist is something that people ask themselves all the time, myself included. Is it my place to make this decision or come in at this point? If you're asking that question from yourself, then most likely it is. In a very high likelihood, nobody else has your specific perspective, which made you wonder about whatever problem it is that you're looking at in the first place. And then, yes, it is kind of your duty to actually do something about it, or at least make sure that somebody is doing something about it. And working in a game studio, I hate it when people become too ingrained in their disciplines and they're hesitant to sort of cross the fence over to art or code or especially design. We really do want everybody to participate. That is why we have a game studio and not some sort of factory. And I think it's a really big act of caring to make sure that you're jumping into wherever you feel like you have some input, even though it might not be in your job description. So that leads me to leaders and leadership. Sometimes I have members of the staff come up to me and ask me for like a bigger position, like more responsibility, to which I always reply that nobody is stopping you from taking initiative right now. That is all there is to being a leader. When you're a leader, then it's quite simple to say, like when we can see that your team is already following you, that okay, here, have some more responsibility. Doing it the other way around simply does not work. You have to be a leader first. The big secret here is that leadership is as simple as doing the previous 3 steps. So deciding that something is your problem, verifying that your assumptions are right, and then actually going out and doing something about it. That's taking initiative, that's leadership. People follow people like that. You don't need any sort of innate charisma or anything of that sort to get there. Innate charisma in itself is a big lie, don't believe in it. So then we come to the 4 questions. So once you have decided to do something about the problem, these are the 4 steps I want my team to take. These are the steps I go through in my mind. Conveniently, it turns out our management has these exact same 4 steps. So if me and my management and my team are all acting like on these 4 steps, then we have a unified culture. We are going in the same direction. Nobody has to be checking up on everything all the time or asking for affirmation from their bosses. That's culture. First question, what is the value to the end user? This is very rarely asked in day-to-day development. More often we start with some sort of perceived or assumed problem and go about solving it, creating a somehow better system or game design. And far too often nobody stops to ask, but what will the fans say? What will the players say? How will they feel about it? What will they write on the forums? That should be the question number 1 at all times. And if your question is that there is no value to the end user, which sometimes may not be quite so apparent, it might be hidden or come about in a long-winded way. But if there is no value, then why are you doing it? It's most likely going to hurt the business. Speaking of which, the second question should always be, what is the value to the business? Can we demonstrate or somehow make an educated guess that yes, this is actually going to bring in more euros to our accounts? If it's not, why are we doing it? And again, the answer might be long-winded. It may come through like after a series of steps on the way. But like if we can't see any added monetary value in the future, why are we doing it? And obviously, this is what management tends to start from, and they should too. But there's no reason why you, as the guy on the line making the decision about whatever feature, why you couldn't make these same decisions. It's not that hard. It's just numbers. I'm sure that there's somebody in the staff that you can go ask about the numbers. Third, how much work is this? This is why being a producer can be so destructive. We tend to start and end here. And that's also what the teams tend to learn from us. We're only looking at like how much work can we get done without actually properly stopping to consider what should we do it in terms of offering more value to the fans and offering more value to the business. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't think about the amount of work, but the amount of work in itself is rather irrelevant. Like the opportunity cost is the way bigger issue here. So like if we do testing X, that means that we can't do thing Y. So which one is more important in terms of fan value and the value to the business? That's what you should be asking yourself. And the final fourth question is, but how dangerous is it? How unknown? How much risk is there? Again, this is something that producers are taught to ask about. But the ugly fact of thinking about risk tends to be that when you're asked to evaluate risk, you're also usually asked to accept the responsibility for that risk. And that's just wrong. Like, yes, you should ask yourselves and your team, okay, how much risk is there? How dangerous is this? But only in the sense that can we afford to take this risk? There is no such thing as risk-free, at least risk-free profitable game development. It's just it just doesn't exist. We're doing new things. We don't know how they're going to pan out in the end. We have to take calculated risks. But the trick is to evaluate the risk in a realistic fashion and see if we can afford to make the mistake if we are wrong here. And that's all there is to it. So finally, making decisions. First, acknowledge that yes, there is a problem, I need to decide something, let's do something about this. Then make sure that whatever you're supposing actually pans out in the real world. Go to your analyst, dig out data, see that the players are behaving in the fashion that you think they are. Like I've been operating The Walking Dead for a year now, and I'm being challenged on my assumptions all the time. I'm wrong at least once per month on pretty big things. Then you can get to the actual tools. So what is the value to the end user? So the fans have to be delighted. If they're not delighted, you're doing something wrong. 2, there has to be added value to the business. If there's not, why would the management say okay? And 3, yes, please consider the opportunity cost of which thing should you work on next. And finally, be sure that you ask the question that can we afford to take this risk? Thank you. That's all there is.
The obscured vision bit here. You actually get 10% of the tickets because it's obstructed vision. You don't, sadly.
He can see me though.
But there's a cool parallax effect to all the lectures.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question would be, how do you deal with bad decision makers? What if someone made a bad decision and then someone needs to fix it? And they don't want to care maybe to begin with, but now they have.
Well, if you have personnel who are actively working against your culture, get rid of them. Immediately. I'm not exaggerating at all. They are very harmful in the long run. However, it is very important, for any studio culture, that it has to be okay to make mistakes. We're all making mistakes. I make mistakes every single week. I made a rather big mistake last Friday, which I kicked myself for the weekend, and that's fine. I know that it's okay in my position to make mistakes, as it's in every other position in the company. So whoever hired you and gave you the mandate to do your job, they've already done the risk analysis. We judge that this guy can make these sorts of decisions, and that's okay. And we understand that they're going to make the occasional mistake. That's fine. The bad decision making tends to be indecision. So you have situations where teams are saying that, yeah, we're not getting anywhere, we're not getting anything done. That to me tells that people are not making decisions. So making a bad decision generally is not that dangerous. So in most cases we can tell that, okay, yeah, we made a mistake there, let's correct course and try again. And generally you will then succeed. And that's fine. So to me, indecision is the enemy, not making bad decisions.